Hi everyone and welcome. Today, we're going to dive really deep into the forces that shape who we are, how our identities are constructed, how they're challenged, and, maybe most importantly, how they can be reclaimed. This session is built for your AMCE program, and we're zeroing in on Theme 3, Representation and Expressions of Identity, and specifically Axis 1, Identity and Diversity.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll get on the same page with some key concepts and set up our big guiding question. Then, we're going to look at how powerful groups have used things like land and law to impose certain identities. After that, we'll flip the script and see how marginalized groups fight back using the power of stories. We'll also explore the new, kind of hybrid identities that come out of all this struggle. And finally, I'll give you a super practical toolkit to help you absolutely nail your analysis for the baccalaureate.
Okay, to kick things off, I want you to really think about this idea from the cultural theorist Stuart Hall. He's saying that identity isn't just one simple thing. It's actually this constant push and pull. On one side, you have the pull of what connects us to our past, our shared history, our traditions. That's the continuity. But on the other side, you have these moments of conflict, of big change, the rupture, that force us to redefine who we are. This tension, it's right at the heart of everything we're going to talk about today.
And that tension leads us right to our guiding question for today. How exactly do dominant powers impose identities, and what are the ways that marginalized groups resist that pressure and forge their own paths? Now, to even begin to answer that, we first need to build up our vocabulary with a few key concepts.
First up, racial identity. Now let's be absolutely clear on this. This has nothing to do with biology. It is a social construct. That means it's an idea, a system of categories that society's invented to organize people, usually into hierarchies. And as we're about to see, these categories have been used time and time again to control power and resources.
Next up, we have cultural heritage. Remember that vector of similarity and continuity Stuart Hall was talking about? Well, this is it. This is all the stuff. The traditions, the values, the stories, even the physical objects that a community shares and passes down through generations. You could say it's the foundation of a group's sense of self.
Okay, representation. This one is all about who gets to tell the story. Think about it. The way a group of people is shown in laws, in movies, in books, it has enormous power. It can lock in negative stereotypes or, and this is key, it can be used as a powerful tool to smash those stereotypes and put forward a new, more authentic identity.
And our final key term is otherness. This is the sneaky mechanism that turns simple difference into a real disadvantage. It happens when a dominant group defines itself as the norm, as the default way of being. The process of othering then pushes everyone else to the edges, painting them as strange or inferior, which then becomes a justification for discrimination.
All right, now that we've got our key terms sorted, let's get to the really interesting part and see how all this plays out in the real world. We're going to look at two of the most powerful tools that dominant groups use to impose identity: law and land.
Just look at this. It's a perfect example of how a law can just wipe out an existing identity. Before the British arrived in India, the concept of gender was much more fluid. The Hijra community, for instance, had a recognized, centuries-old role in society. But then, the British Empire arrived and imposed Section 377, a law straight out of their own Victorian-era morality, which criminalized homosexuality. Just like that, a complex, diverse social reality was flattened and replaced by a rigid, foreign legal code.
And this example from Pasadena, California, shows the powerful link between land and identity. You can literally see 3 layers of conquest here, and in each one, the land itself is used to build a new racial hierarchy. First, the Spanish missionaries used the land to civilize the indigenous people, basically forcing them into a subordinate labor class. Then, after Mexico gained independence, those mission lands were broken up, creating a new wealthy elite of Californio landowners. And finally, American settlers show up, create homesteads, and deliberately erase the area's Mexican history to create this new vision of an Anglo-Saxon farming community. In every single case, whoever controlled the land controlled the story of who belonged there.
So, we've seen how power can impose identity using these very concrete tools. But you know what? That is not the end of the story. Not by a long shot. Now we're going to look at how people fight back. And their main weapon in this fight, it's the narrative.
Here's the crucial idea. When your identity is being twisted or flat out denied by other people, telling your own story is a revolutionary act. It's a way of standing up and saying, I exist, we exist, and this is who we say we are. It's about challenging that official, imposed narrative and taking back the power to define yourself.
The classic example of this, of course, is Shahrazad from The 1001 Nights. She's facing a king who is literally killing a new wife every single morning. How does she survive? By telling stories. But she does so much more than just survive. Her storytelling is an incredible act of agency. She masterfully uses her voice to deflect the king's violence and assert her own power.
And this tradition of resisting through narrative is alive and well today. I mean, think of someone like Jamila Boupacha, the Algerian freedom fighter. Her testimony about being tortured by French soldiers, which was famously championed by Simone de Beauvoir, became this huge international symbol in the fight against colonialism. In the same way, post-colonial writers like Fatima Mernissi and Assia Jabbar used their novels and autobiographies to give a voice to histories that were deliberately silenced, writing against the marginalization of women and reclaiming their story.
Now, this whole struggle between imposition and resistance, it doesn't just stop when a country gains independence. It actually leads to the creation of brand new, complex, and often hybrid identities in the world we live in today. So let's take a look at what they're like.
So what makes these new identities so new? Well, for one, they're incredibly dynamic. You see it in Faiza Gaines' novels about Maghrebi French youth. It's all about navigating between multiple cultures, multiple languages, all at once. It's about taking that experience of being on the margins and pulling it right into the center of your own story. It also means using global connections to break free from old, restrictive national boxes, reinterpreting the past on your own terms, and using art and creativity to actively fight back against those old, tired stereotypes.
Okay, for our last section, we're going to get really practical. We've talked about all these complex ideas, and now I want to give you a clear, simple tool so you can use this knowledge to build a fantastic analysis in your essays and oral exams.
I want you to burn this three-step method into your brain. Idea, example, explanation. It's that simple. For every single paragraph you write, you start with your main idea, your argument, in a clear topic sentence. Second, you back it up with a specific example or a quote from the source document. And third, and this is the most important part, you explain how that example proves your idea. You have to connect the dots. Use phrases like, this demonstrates how, or this reveals that. This links your evidence back to your point and to the bigger thing.
And here's one final tip that will really make your work stand out. Be precise. Make sure you use the key vocabulary we've been talking about today. Words like social construct, representation, othering, hybridity. Using this language shows that you have a real command of the topic, and it will seriously elevate the quality of your analysis. It's all about precision and coherence.
Okay, let's bring this all home. It's time to circle back and directly answer that guiding question we started with. How do dominant powers impose identities, and in what ways do marginalized groups resist and forge their own?
Well, what we've seen is that identity is not some fixed, stable thing. It's a battlefield, really, a site of constant political and cultural struggle. We've seen how dominant groups use very real tools like land and more abstract systems like the law to enforce their version of reality. But we've also seen how marginalized groups fight back, using the incredible power of their own stories to reclaim their history and their agency. And the result of all this in our modern, post-colonial world is the emergence of these complex, dynamic, hybrid identities that carry all of that history within them.
And that leaves us with one final thought. We've been looking at the past, but this struggle is happening right now, all around us. So the question I want to leave you with is this. If our identities really are stories that are constantly being rewritten, who holds the pen today? Who is controlling the narrative now, and whose voices were we still not hearing? That's something to really think about as you continue your studies. Thanks so much for joining me today.